This is Tele number 1, and since I just finished recording my instrumental of Breakdown by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, my intention to change this polycarbonate nut that came on this XGP neck with one of these bones that I bought is now something to do. I didn't want to fiddle with it while I was in the process of learning the song and recording it, because I had everything set up perfectly as I wanted it. And now it's time. So bass side, I have about 19th thou on the low E. Treble side, 16th thou. That's what I like. Gives me the touch setup that I want. And with that, the way the neck is set in, truss rod adjustments, saddles, I can get exactly the feel that I want for action on this guitar. This neck has the jumbo frets on it, which is nice. So all I got to do, start with, is to loosen all these strings. I don't want to take them off just yet. I put them on recently. There's still life left in them, and unless I bugger something up, I just want to use up the rest of the life that's in them. So the intention will be, maybe I can leave that one up top. Maybe I can leave that one up top. I don't know. Probably works better if they're down to the side. I have a little holder somewhere that I made. It might be in that bag where all my sandpapers are, to hold these things down for me while I'm working on it. Just get that from under the tree. Pop down, pop down. This is the third one, so that goes over there. Needs a little bit more on the G string. There. Alright. Let's hope they stay down there for me. Now, this nut, I didn't cement it in when I modified it. When I first put this together, I just got the height and I left it without any glue, just in case there were going to be issues. So let's compare that to one of these. Now I found that on Tele number 3 with the same neck, I had to bring this down a little bit in order to match. Ooh. Hoo-hoo. Oh my. That's really, really strange. Stuck to that. Oh, what's this? Oh. That's my Dave's World of Fun sticker. I supported Dave and his 4 amps collection. Haven't figured out where to stick this thing yet. Trusty caliper. Okay, so let's just measure that end. That end is 382 on the original. 390. Woohoo! So close. I couldn't eyeball that. Okay, bass end 4, 5, 3. Four, 4, 0. That's what I thought. It might look higher than I needed. Now the slot on the old nut is cut quite a bit deeper than the slot on the new nut. So that may just compensate for the difference in the height that I'm worried about. So the first thing to do would be to stick one of these in there. And that's going to need some glue when I... Okay, maybe that one... I noticed that these are not all exactly the same width. Okay. And let's see if there's one that fits a little tighter. No. So, they're all pretty much the same. In this slot, although that one seems to have a little bit of lateral movement. Let's see. Maybe no, that one's a little bit tighter by a smidge. That one's a... Oh. And then this one, straight in. That one's a little bit tighter. Okay. Let's think about that one. And let's go for it again. 392 compared to 394 on the original. So the head is much closer. So they're not manufactured exactly 100% perfectly. There are tolerances. 438 and the nut slot, and this one's going to be higher. That's 439. Can I get it in the slot? Let's see. Over the top, 393. The high end, 383. These nuts may be too low on the bass side. Get in there. Maybe even on the treble side, I don't know. Let's see. Put the tree underneath there. I'm only going to tune up the ease. Turn on my Korg, so I can see it. And it didn't take much to get it to pitch. If you do this too many times with strings, you end up breaking them, as I found out. So here comes 1E. Close enough. Yeah, so that is causing buzz. That means it's lower than the 19 I had, I'm pretty sure. Go home, put things on the side. So that's a 20. Oh, you know, that 20 is fitting underneath there. And I think that side's going to be okay. It's probably going to have to be something else now that oh, you know what, I don't have all the tension on the neck, so the truss rod is not doing its job without tension. So that is giving me more than 20 underneath there, so the deepness of the string slot, this is a bone, and we'll put in the bone bag. Try to be organized. So the deepness of the slot being less has compensated by, you know, a couple of thou up. So it looks like it's going to work on that side. And do I have enough on the other side? 16. Yes. You know, I'm going to just tune them all up and see what happens. Okay. I hope that. Let's take a little look-see. Oh yeah, that is, that's way higher than my 20. I am probably going to take a smidgen off the bottom of that nut. Smidgen. I usually go for 18 on the original neck nut. I left it at 19 to see, and I liked it okay at 19. 20. 20. 20. Oh yeah. So even though the full height profile is lower than the other one, the nut slot is higher, and the string sits in the slot quite well, with about half of the string out. The rest of them, A and D, G, B, is sitting just a little bit out, and E is flush with it. Not a big deal unless there's a problem. Okay, so 654 is alright. 3, there's a bit of a buzz. The other two, okay, so looks like the G, the break angle, has to be increased a bit. Worry about that later. So right now, let me see what I've got. Over 25. Okay. And 25 is the largest I've got in this set. So, is the bottom end 18? Let's just see. Okay, so the low E, a high E, low end of the fretboard is about 18. So here's where it gets tricky, that I need probably about 2 thou off this side, and I need about 5 to 6 thou off the bass end. So creating that is slope sanding off is where the dangers come in of taking too much off the treble side. So to begin with, my usual plan of attack is I start with flat to take the 2 thou off that I need on the high end, the high string end, and then I tape off that end and I sand just the upper part to create that small slope. And then at the end, when I have it approximately right here, I just sand that little hump transition in the middle to smooth it off to the slope that I want to make it sit bottom end in the slot. So I need 2 thou here, 6 thou there. We will see what that turns out. Now that means that I am going to have to, and that'll of course automatically adjust the rest of these in the middle as you get them. But let's do a little check. I'm going to bring this down. It may or may not always work. It has worked for me in the past. Yes, that one is also high. And check that one. Oh, I got mail. Yeah, so 25 is passing underneath the D as well. Just barely touching it. So, okay, so I think I will be safe to start off sanding flat off the bottom of that nut. Okay, so just move that up there a little bit, and I have this block. It's a CNC block of aluminum. What I did is I took the self-sticking sandpaper. I think this one is it's a 320 or a 180, I don't know, I can't remember. What was this piece here? This piece was the same piece, and I think it's about a 180. Now, on this block, back and forth, very smoothly. So what I do is I hold it at both ends, like that, kind of get even pressure across it, and then just move it back and forth. This is a long, tedious process, so I'm not going to show it on camera the entire amount of time that I need to play with this to take the bottom end off. But that's what I do. I move it back and forth. See, as flat as possible. I check it every so often. Now the other thing you have to be careful about is when you're sanding on the block, try to keep it flat. I've run into this problem before. You keep it flat, right? Not putting more pressure on the fore or aft side of the nut, because what happens is that if you end up sanding it at an angle, well then the nut sits in the slot at the wrong angle, and then the strings over the slot will not work properly for you. I have done that in my inexperience early on. So this is something to watch out for. And then, once I get this piece of sandpaper kind of crudded up, I just take a little used toothbrush I have for cleaning stuff, and I just, in my garbage pail, just clean it all off and start all over again. So I'm going to work on this for a little while, do some checking, and then I'll be back when I think I've got it. So it's going to take some time to get this down to 2 thou, and do some checking with the on-off with the string. And then once I've got it 2 thou, I'm going to I just put masking tape around this end, and then I run it this way, in and out, up to the masking tape, which basically takes this side down. It creates a small transition, as I mentioned, and once I have that where I want it, then I just sand off the transition. So it helps to bring this down like 1 thou to begin with, so that when you're sanding off the transition, if it drops too far, then you're too low. So I'll take it down 1 thou here, tape it off, and then when I sand off the transition, if I need just a touch more, it's very easy to do to get me down to the 2 thou I actually need on that end. Okay, I will do some work on that and be back with an update where I am later. So I'm at some of the interim work, and I've reached the point where I needed to tape it up. Now once this happens, I can't go back in the neck, right, to check the height with the string. So when I get to this point, in order to help me out, I have this little digital caliper. Now I've mentioned this before, these were on sale for 12 bucks. At my local Canadian Tire store here in Canada. And they come on sale every so often, and I'm sure other people can find these. They're fairly inexpensive. They're fairly easy to use. So, what I do to give me an idea of how much I'm taking off on this side while I'm sanding is I take a measurement from the high side of the nut. That works the way I want it to, and that tells me it is 355 in millimeters. Now I use millimeters because if I go inches, it's 0.139, and it's a little bit easier to read it with the millimeters and figure out where you are. So that's 355 on the E. On the A, it's 382. On the D, caliper fits in that slot, string slot, properly, so you can actually get the string, bottom of the string height. 397. So it progressively gets higher to match the radii of the neck. So then when I'm sanding, I do the same thing with the new nut. Take that sensitive measurement very gently, not to do any damage to that slot, and I'm at 376 now. So 376 to 355, memory problems, 358, 355. Is a ways to go. So now with the sanding, when I get to this point, you don't want to be doing it this way, because that way you're going to have a problem with angling the bottom, and you don't want that angled. You want to maintain flatness. So what I do is I put it on the edge, put pressure down just gently my finger from above right in the middle of where I want to sand, that side, flat, right? And that stops it from trying to be one side or the other. And then what I do is I just use my other hand to just pull it back and forth gently until it hits the end of the tape. And then what I do also is I move it up and down the sandpaper this way as I'm going along to help use parts of the sandpaper that have not been filled in with bone dust. Before I have to stop and clean it out with my brush. So gentle pressure, nice and slow. Being in a rush at this is not your friend. Now I do it this way because I don't have all those expensive nut files like our friend Dave has, and he cuts them down from the top and angles them and the like, because he's got a lot of experience doing that and the tools, and I'm sure he made his share of mistakes when he was learning how to do it. And so this is a little bit safer method for me. I understand how to do this. I have done it several times now. On pretty much every neck I got, I had to, you know, change the nut height. And on the polycarbonates. So let's see what that little bit did. Zeroed. See what we're down to. 378. So that didn't take off very much. I was going very, very gently as I was talking. I don't want to make any mistakes while I'm talking and explaining. The sandpaper does a really smooth job on the bottom. With a little light in there, really smooth at 180. And I know it's slow, but it's cheap, right? Because my time is now worth nothing, and it's a labor of love for me to do this kind of work on my own guitars. That means anybody can actually do this kind of really easy stuff. Because if you take it out to one of the shops, somebody who's probably no more experienced at this than I am is going to end up doing whatever they do, and you know, charge you $100 for the labor to put in a $3 nut. Doesn't make any sense to me. I can sit down here and just do this and get it on. So that is the interim report, and I'll keep checking this with the caliper, and when I get really, really close, I end up taking off the tape and putting the string on to check it before I reach the 255 that's in there. When I get to 258, maybe 260, I'll start getting it up there and trying to do some adjustments. And then what I do is I take my pencil and I mark where the tape was here on the side, like that. So when I take it off to try it, to put the tape back on, I get it in exactly the same position to keep going until I need to actually file down the small hump transition. So that's my methodology, and I'm sticking to it. And we're back near the end. So the nut has been temporarily mounted. It's not glued in yet, but it's down where it was before for the base end. I'm able to get on the treble side, it's exactly where I had it before, 20 just touches the bottom of the string, 18 just doesn't, so that's approximately exactly where it was, and I should say the bass end. I think I said treble again. I keep calling this end the treble. But the bass strings are pretty much exactly where they were. The treble end, I can get an 18 up underneath there, and the 18 goes up underneath there. Just about perfect. So that's about 18. 16 would have been the best preference. It's a little bit loose. So I know that I've got space. I'm going to leave it tuned up and let the truss rod readjust for a while and then check it again. I've got the... Yeah, I'm going to have to adjust the taper slope on the back of the B. Maybe a touch on the G. All the rest of them are okay. So far I'm very satisfied. The other thing that's different about these bone nuts is that they're 43 millimeters wide and the originals are 42. Now that changes the string position across the neck a tiny little bit to open them up. For me that's not a bad thing because the meat on the back of my fingers, often when I'm doing my instrumentals, will touch the one below it. Sometimes I want that to happen, and then sometimes it's not what I want and it happens anyway. So if it's a tiny little bit apart, that might give me a little bit more maneuverability. But I mean, I'm talking like a quarter of a millimeter difference between the two nuts. So that means that when I finally am happy with everything, and I see whether or not I want to take a little bit more off the treble end, just sanding off that side to bring it down a tad. What I'll do at that point is also, I'm just going to file off the ends of the nut to make them flush with the neck, and then it'll be exactly where I want it. And at that point I'll put a tiny little bit of wood glue in there just to hold it in place. Now what I use to taper is something I learned from Boudreaux guitars. I don't know what Boudreaux's first name is. Probably heard it. I just don't know. Now he brought the attention to the set, which I think I've showed on another video once before. These are some kind of gas burner cleaners. And they have, see on the thicker one, they have little grooves that act like a file. And there's several sizes, and all the way down to the teeny one at the bottom end, which is smaller than a 10 size string. So the next one up is about where I would go in there, and then I think the next one up from that, thicker one, which I've cut off the end, because there's like a file part and then a clear end at the end, and I guess that's for locating because there's a point. But for my needs, to make the adjustment on the guitar neck, there's a tiny little bit of wood at the back end of the nut, and not to take it all off and file it and put all the strings back on again, what I do to see if it's minor, I'll just undo the string, lift it off, and just run this on the back end without hitting the wood and scratching the poly, and see if I can get off just enough at the back end. And if it works, fine, and if not, then I do have to go through getting it off, sliding it out, giving it an angle where there's no wood, and then sliding it back in and doing it over again. But these are really easy to use. They're a poor man's cheap nut file system for just these slight adjustments at the top. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours. I got my little trusty round files out, and I found a set of magnifying glasses like this. We have a store here in Canada called, at least in Ontario, called Princess Auto. They're not in all provinces. There's 3 different powered magnifiers in here. You can add them together to add up the intensity, and they make a really great magnifier to be able to look for the size of these little files and look in there and see which one fits the slot for the width of the string the best, and then you can see the angle, and then make a few passes holding on to it gently. This one's really thin. Holding it down at an angle on the back side. Take a look and see if it was enough. Still pretty flat on the top. This is a really thin file, this B string. I might have to move up one file size larger to get what I'm looking for, but I'm going to try with the small one that seems to fit the slot at the string size best first. I can get an angle on this without hitting the poly on the wood behind it right now. I don't know if that will continue to work because it is really close to the poly. And if there's a small scratch there, I mean, it's not the end of the world. Won't affect the functionality. So just position it. I just pulled the string back off from under the string tree and I just pulled it back. It's still under full pitch. And try to be as straight as possible. Doing this, just put pressure with your fingertip to angle it. Run it back and forth. Won't hurt you. It's a very fine file. That's why it works so slowly. And you got to make sure you keep the angle so that you do not change the height at the leading edge of the nut as it goes over. You want that to be the breakaway point. Nice and clean to give you the nice clear ring. Slow and steady is what I always tell you. Slow and steady. Now if it doesn't work as best as I'd like it to, I'll have to move it out. So now I just slide that back over out of the G slot into that slot. I'll just push down on it. I had a little pick here somewhere. There it is. I'll just push down on it to create the break angle. I think it's okay. And that's one of those things you really notice more when it's amplified. You can hear the sitar sound when it's really bad. Like I said, it's a labor of love because I love these guitars. And to learn to do these minor things yourself can save you a lot of time and money at the music store for such simple things, and you need relatively inexpensive, a few tools to do it. So I think what I'll do next is plug it in and see what it's sounding like. So, open strings. So a nut really only makes a difference when it's open strings because that's where it's being fretted. Every other thing you play doesn't matter because the nuts are wherever you use the frets. So the sound, you know, I can't say I notice an appreciable difference between the polycarbonate and this bone nut. Seems to have made more of a difference on the other Tele. If I was going to do another petty, it would be Refugee. So yeah, Refugee. I've got some information about how to play those things. There's a lot more riffs in that song that would need to be worked out. So this is the update of the bone nut on this guitar for now. That's how I do nuts.